And I think the bigger issue is the prisoners are viewed as an expendable, literally as being an expendable workforce. No one in government cares if they get killed or injured.
At Tuesday's debate, President Trump was asked about the massive wildfires ravaging California, and he blamed it on, quote unquote, poor forest management. Not climate change, poor forest management. Let's hear the clip.
Do you believe that human pollution, greenhouse gas emissions contributes to the global warming of this planet?
I think a lot of things do, but I think to an extent, yes. But I also think we have to do better management of our forests. Every year, I get the call, California's burning. If that was cleaned, if you had forest management, good forest management, you wouldn't be getting those calls.
You know who does more than just receive a call about these deadly fires every year? The 1,354 incarcerated people paid around $1 per hour with no benefits and enlisted to go fight these deadly fires year after year. California's Governor Gavin Newsom recently made headlines after signing a bill that would create an easier path for people who fought fires while incarcerated to use this experience to become civilian firefighters after they are released. It highlights the larger issue of cheap prison labor being used to fight fires in the most destructive fire season in California's history. We spoke with Paul Wright, editor-in-chief with Prison Legal News.
I think faced with widespread criticism of these prison slave labor practices, Newsom signed this law into effect, which actually doesn't really do much of anything it does nothing at all for the prisoners who are currently fighting fires. The reality is those same prisoners right now are deemed good enough to be firefighters by the state and good enough to be exploited and good enough to risk their lives right now.
In the peak of fire season, nearly 1 in 4 of the state's frontline firefighters are prisoners.
Basically, the scope of it is at any given time they employ anywhere between 3,000 and 5,000 prisoners in conservation camps spread throughout the wilderness in California, where they supplement the efforts of professional firefighters and volunteers as well as contract firefighters. And their conditions, from the videos that I've seen and the prisoners I've talked to that have been in these work camps, is basically they're pretty rudimentary and almost rustic. But that said, it's better than the maximum security California prisons and better than prison arrangements that they normally have. But the critical thing is that the prisoners are risking their lives.
Prisoner firefighters are more than 4 times as likely to have work-related injuries compared with professional firefighters working on the same fires. And in the same comparison, they were also more than 8 times as likely to be injured after inhaling smoke and particulates.
And I think the bigger issue is the prisoners are viewed as an expendable, literally as being an expendable workforce. No one in government cares if they get killed or injured.
According to the Federal Bureau of Labor Statistics, California's prisoners are paid $2 per day plus $1 an hour when fighting an active fire, significantly less than the average $73,000 per year earned by civilian firefighters. Civilian firefighters receive benefits like workers' comp and health insurance, and prison firefighters rely on prison health care, which is notoriously run down. This program saves the state around $90 million annually by using prisoner firefighters who together work upwards of 3 million hours every year.
I think that the only reason they're using prison slave labor to fight forest fires is because of the cost savings. I don't see that there's a shortage of volunteer firefighters. Kamala Harris's role in this is, I think, especially noteworthy because when she was Attorney General of California, she actually argued against the release of low security and low risk prisoners by arguing that releasing large numbers of these low level prisoners would impact the state's ability to use their slave labor to fight forest fires.
And to make matters worse, the prisoner volunteers are usually unable to use their experience and training in firefighting outside of prison. California's 900-plus local fire departments require employees to have an EMT license, which is impossible to obtain for recently released felons who must wait 10 years to apply after they are released from prison. Former Governor Jerry Brown signed a bill to create a training academy for recent parolees, but it only had 80 spots.
when we read news reports about tens of millions of Americans that have lost their work or are unemployed due to COVID and the economic upheaval that COVID has caused, how many of these people could be employed fighting forest fires at a fair daily, at whatever the prevailing market wage is for firefighters? And the fact that the state would rather continue exploiting prisoners at a fraction of what the prevailing market rate is, rather than give jobs to people who need them, I think kind of illustrates the whole purpose of this is simply to keep exploiting prisoner slave labor. And it's totally economic. It has nothing to do with helping the prisoners, it has nothing to do with rehabilitation. And conversely, it also has nothing to do with employing people who need work either.